Yeah. Okay, that's how we'll proceed then, without objection from the parties. All right, let's bring the jury in, please. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that the jury is back in the courtroom now. Please call your next witness, Ms. Pearson.
The people call Sergeant Matt Files.
Good afternoon. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, Your Honor.
Please be seated.
Thank you.
And, Your Honor, we're calling Sergeant Files for a limited purpose at this time,
Okay.
subject to recall later.
All right. Sir, please tell us your full name and spell your first and last names.
Yes, my name is Matthew Files. My first name is spelled M-A-T-T-H-E-W. My last is F-Y-L-E-S.
Ms. Pearson, you may proceed.
Sergeant Files, who do you work for?
I'm currently employed by the City of Aurora, the Aurora Police Department.
How long have you worked for the Aurora Police Department?
I've been a police officer with the City of Aurora for just over 12 years.
When did you become sergeant?
I made sergeant in 2011. I was a detective in MCU before that.
And MCU is what?
It's our acronym for the homicide unit.
When you became a sergeant, did you become a sergeant of MCU?
I spent a short period of time on patrol, a few months, and then returned to the unit as one of the supervisors for the homicide unit.
What's your role in this case? What were you assigned to do in July of 2012?
So as a supervisor in the homicide unit, we rotate on call. We work normally business hours, Monday through Friday. So the evening of July 20th, I was the on-call supervisor, and I had a corresponding team of on-call detectives. That evening, my responsibility was to answer the call if there was any homicide or officer-involved significant use of force incident, and respond with my detectives.
Did that make you the supervisor of this investigation?
Yes, ultimately I assumed the role of the lead supervisor for the investigation.
Have you also assisted in the investigation in this case?
Yes, I have.
Did you review every report that was created by every person who worked on this case?
I have.
And are those kept as official records of the Aurora Police Department?
They are.
Do you know how many Aurora police officers have worked on this case?
Yes, we have approximately 444 officers, employees that authored reports in this case. Now, some of those individuals have since retired or moved on, but that's how many employees for the police department authored reports. Of course, there's the crime lab. Those are not officers. Those are civilians and other support civilian staff with the Aurora Police Department that participated in this.
We've heard some witnesses talk about seeing officers from other agencies on scene. Do you know how many other agencies assisted at the shooting at the Century 16 Theater?
Yeah, so the night of the incident, what we qualified as initial responders, there were approximately 23 different entities that responded that night initially. As time went on during that day, other agencies responded, and approximately 27 local agencies, so that would be state, county, municipal, and then of course we had 4 federal agencies that responded: FBI, ATF, marshals, and then of course we had personnel from various fire departments that responded to assist, that provided assistance.
Did you determine how quickly officers were able to respond to the scene?
Sustain on foundation.
Did you review all of the records that all the officers have done in this case?
Yes.
And as a result of reviewing these records, were you able to determine when officers responded and which officers responded?
Yes.
From that, were you able to determine how quickly officers were able to respond to the scene?
Yes. We were able to look at those reports, CAD, things of that nature, people calling out on the radio. What we determined was within the first 90 seconds, so a minute and 30 seconds, we had 52 police vehicles present and 129 officers. Some of those were uniformed, some of those were plainclothes, that responded to the theater.
What time were you called out that night?
I was called around 12:45 a.m. on the 20th.
What time did you arrive at the theater?
I believe I was pulling into the area just after 1. It took me quite some time to actually get through the parking lot and to the command post at the theater.
Why was that?
When I came down Alameda. As I was pulling down Sable, I could see the sea of police vehicles, the red and blues, that were filling the parking lot of the entire mall structure. And so I had to weave my way through cars, personnel. Of course, parking lots had been full in the movie theater with moviegoers' vehicles. We had fire personnel, fire trucks, people out on foot. So it took me 15 minutes to maneuver that. I mean, I could see it. It was probably a few hundred yards. But
As you got close to the theater, what did you see?
officers had begun to move moviegoers. I assume they were moviegoers. They were obviously not officers. And the mall was closed at that time, so that would have been the only business open. So they were civilians that they were moving into an area, like a staging area, and RTD buses were arriving through the lot. And this was on the east side between the mall and the movie theater. And then there were command posts that had been staged. I believe Aurora Fire's command post was there. Our police command post was there. I remember Greenwood Village was already pulling up with theirs. And those were by the theater, sort of southeast corner, was where they had determined was going to be the CP. So
The CP?
yes, command post. Fire trucks, ambulances, police vehicles everywhere. There were some cars that people had seemed to have gotten into and tried to leave, and then they couldn't, so they were just stopped in the thoroughfares.
Now, did you approach the theater from the front of the theater, the lobby side, or the back of the theater?
Yeah, so I came in south on Sable from Alameda and turned in right there at Center Point, and then drove up. It's kind of towards the Sears, and then came in from the north end of the theater, and I parked. I really couldn't get much further than the northern parking lot of the theater, and I walked in along that, what would be the west portion of the theater, down to the CP, which was on the southwest corner of the movie theater.
You mentioned the RTD buses. How was that arranged to get buses there? Because they arrived rather quickly, didn't they?
Correct. We do a lot of training and preparedness for active shooter scenarios or critical incidences like catastrophes, natural disasters. Some of those things include having memos of understanding with other agencies, other entities. One of those is the RTD. And so in instances like this, we have dispatch notify RTD. They bring us resources. In this case, it was buses for transport.
Were you involved in coordinating the transport of witnesses and victims to Gateway High School?
Yeah, so I had a lot of responsibilities, obviously, and one of those was delegating certain tasks to individuals. It had already been determined that Gateway would be our triage location for witnesses, and so I coordinated that effort through Detective Miller, who was one of my detectives in the homicide unit, and gave him the responsibility of ensuring that we had enough detectives at that location, people were transported, and resources were established.
Was the defendant still on scene while you were on scene?
When I first got there, I believe he was, yes. I was told later that they were transporting, and I took that as that immediate time they were transporting.
Were you given any of the defendant's property that night?
Yes, I attended a briefing with command personnel. There just wasn't enough real estate for everybody that needed to have the briefing, so I got the information to give to my detectives. And when I came out of that, they were huddled around, and there were some officers nearby, two of which were Sergeant Steve Redfern and Officer Oviatt.
What did Sergeant Redfern have?
Sergeant Redfern had in his possession a wallet, and he advised me that it was a wallet that had been taken off of the party in custody, and he handed me that wallet.
What did you do with the wallet?
I took possession of it, and then as I did that, I was immediately advised by Officer Oviatt that he too had an item that had come off of the suspect in this.
What did Officer Oviatt have?
He had the driver's license for the party that they had taken into custody, which he handed to me, and then I reviewed.
Did you look at the license that was given to you?
I did.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 339. Do you recognize that item?
I do.
What is it?
It's a Colorado State driver's license, and it's been issued to a particular party.
Is it in the same condition as when you got it on July 20th of 2012?
It is.
And is that in fact the license that you got?
It is.
Your Honor, I move for admittance of People's Exhibit 339.
Can I see that, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is there any objection, Mr. King?
No, sir.
All right, without objection, Exhibit 339 is admitted and may be published.
Your Honor, I think we need to hand it to the jurors if we were going to do that. So,
It's up to you. Are you asking to publish it?
not at this moment, I'm not.
All right.
What did you do with the driver's license? And what did you do with the wallet?
First, I noted who the license had been issued to and the address on it. And then at that point, I took the license and the wallet. I opened the wallet to begin to put it back in and decided not to, and I just put the ID on top of the wallet, and I handed it to Detective Welton, who's one of our detectives in the homicide unit, and requested that he take care of it.
So you handed both the wallet and the ID to him?
That is correct.
Your Honor, now I would like to publish the exhibit, if I may, to the jury.
Yes, and do you want to put it on the overhead and the Elmo, or?
We could do that, yes.
All right, that might be faster.
Yes. And did the license reflect an address?
Did.
What address is on the license?
The address is 1690 Parish Street, apartment number 10, in the city of Aurora.
And the name on the driver's license?
James Egan Holmes.
Can you also tell from the license, if we could have it back up again, what date the license was issued?
Yes, that information is contained on the license. And for this particular license, it was issued on October 18th, 2011.
Thank you. We will recall you again at a later time.
Is there cross-examination at this time, Mr. King?
No, thank you.
Right. And it does not appear that the jury has any questions at this time. All right, sir, you're subject to recall. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Call your next witness, please. Mr. Edson.
People call Detective Thomas Welton.
Good afternoon. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Please be seated. Could you please tell us your full name and spell your first and last names?
Thomas Welton, W-E-L-T-O-N.
And your first name,
Thomas,
how do you spell it?
oh, I'm sorry, sir. T-H-O-M-A-S.
Thank you. Mr. Edson,
Thank
you
you.
may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
How are you?
Good.
Could you please tell the jury what do you do for a living?
I'm a police officer for the city of Aurora,
How long have you been a police officer with the city of Aurora?
30 years.
Do you have any prior law enforcement experience before becoming an officer with Aurora?
I served 4 years in the United States Air Force as a law enforcement specialist.
As we are here today, what are your current assignments with the city of Aurora?
I am currently assigned to the Major Crime Homicide Unit and have been for the last 11 years.
What is your rank?
It's detective.
You've sort of already encapsulated this question, but I'll be specific here. On July 20th, 2012, were you also a detective with the Major Crimes Unit in the City of Aurora Police Department?
Yes, I was.
On July 20th, 2012, as a member of the Major Crime Unit, were you involved in any sort of way in the investigation of the homicides and shootings that occurred at the Century 16 Theater?
Yes, I was.
Tell the jury what was your specific role.
I was notified by our sergeant, Matt Files, that a shooting had occurred approximately 1:09 in the morning. I was told that multiple gunshots had been fired inside the theater. We had several victims, and it was requested that I respond to the scene. I arrived there shortly, about 45 minutes later, about 1:45.
And I'm going to interrupt your testimony. Judge, forgive me. We're calling Detective Welton for a limited purpose, and we'll have him subject to recall with the court's permission.
Yes.
Thank you. Tell the jury, if you would, please, what you observed when you arrived on scene.
It was pretty chaotic. There was multiple emergency police vehicles surrounding the theater from many metro-wide jurisdictions. When I first arrived, I couldn't even make it to the theater.
On that date, who was an acting supervisor for the Major Crime Unit, if you know?
Sergeant Matt Files.
Were you one of the Major Crime Unit homicide detectives that was on call that evening to respond immediately to any homicides in the Aurora area?
Yes, I was.
Was there any other detectives that were also in that on-call capacity?
Yes, there were.
Who would that have been?
I've been Detective Craig Apple, Mark Iacchino, and Just based on the nature of that incident, I believe everybody from our unit was actually called out. Do you want me to name them all?
No, that's fine. Let me ask you this. How many roughly major crime unit detectives were part of your unit on that time period?
I believe at that time, 12, at least 12.
Okay, so out of what I'm trying to get is a sense of how many of those 12s were the quote-unquote on-call detectives that were going to respond anyway versus those who were called in because of the magnitude of this crime.
Oh,
Overruled.
Go ahead.
typically, we have at least 3, sometimes 4 detectives on call throughout the week. But like I said before, because of the nature of this incident, I believe everybody in our unit was called in.
To the best of your knowledge, did each of those detectives or many of your detectives have individual assignments related to investigation of this crime,
Yes, sir, they did.
including yourself?
Yes.
When you arrived on scene, were you briefed in any sort of way?
Yes, sir, I was.
Describe, if you would, for us how that occurred.
Initially, or I should say typically, we would all have a briefing, whether it be in our MCU van or a location away from the scene, and get a briefing from either the officer that first responded or one of the supervisors that were on scene in patrol. This instance, like I said, it was more chaotic. I believe we had a command post set up. So there was actually an initial briefing that I believe Sergeant Files attended along with Detective Apple.
Did you attend that?
No, I did not.
Why is that?
Not enough room in the command post.
Go ahead, continue.
So the rest of the detectives, we were just kind of standing outside waiting for Sergeant Files to brief us and give us our assignments.
Did you enter the theater that evening?
No, I did not.
Okay. Were you nonetheless given an assignment, and I'll specifically direct your attention to collecting any sort of evidence or property?
Yes, as we were standing getting a briefing from Sergeant Files, a police officer came up and handed Sergeant Files a wallet that was said to have belonged to James Holmes. Being that he was the acting supervisor, I took the wallet from him.
He being Sergeant Files?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why did you take the wallet from Sergeant Files?
Well, because it would need to be copied and placed into evidence.
And did you undertake that specific portion of the activity?
Yes, sir, I did.
When you take a piece of evidence such as the wallet, as you're describing, what did you do with it? How did you collect it, if you will?
Basically put in a evidence envelope and then transport it back to headquarters.
Prior to placing the wallet in an envelope, as you described, did you look through it and otherwise kind of separate some of the items?
Later that morning I did, yes.
Okay. That would have been the morning of July 20th?
Yes, sir.
All right, but not initially?
No, sir.
All right. Did you yourself observe the contents of the wallet that you're describing?
Yes, I did.
And did you personally not only place and book the wallet into evidence, but did also the contents as well?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Judge, I've shown these to defense already.
All right, thank you.
Detective, I've placed several items in front of you. I'm going to talk about them in general, if you allow me to, one at a time here. The first thing that I'd like to talk about is People's Exhibit 718. Is that before you?
Yes, sir, it is.
Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
What in general is that?
It contains insurance cards and the brown wallet that I had received some sergeant files.
Also stapled within that 718 exhibit, is there also People's Exhibit 719?
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize People's Exhibit 719?
Yes, I do.
What is that?
It's a student ID card from the University of Colorado Medical Campus and a blank check, both issued to James Holmes.
Do you personally recognize those items?
Yes, I do.
So for both People's Exhibit 718 and People's Exhibit 719, did you place both of those items into evidence?
Yes, I did.
Did you place them both into the same evidentiary envelope that you described?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. Aside from perhaps how they're packaged today, did they appear to be in the same or similar condition as when you placed them into evidence?
Yes, sir.
Judge, at this time, I would request admission of People's Exhibits 718 and 719.
Can I see those, please? Any objection? All right, without objection, People's Exhibits 718 and 719 are admitted.
Judge, if I may, with the court's permission, what my intention is to publish many of these items physically to the jury, have them look at that, but I'd like to do it at the end if that's acceptable to the court.
Yes.
Before you, Detective, do you also have People's Exhibit 720?
Yes, sir, I do.
Do you also have People's Exhibit 721 with you as well?
Yes, sir.
Judge, may I approach the witness briefly?
Yes.
Also, People's Exhibit 722. Do you have that as well?
Yes, sir.
All three of those exhibits, are they all stapled together against one envelope?
Yes, sir.
All right, so I want to start first with People's Exhibit 720. In general, what is that?
It's a Point Loma Credit Union Visa card issued to James Holmes.
People's Exhibit 721, what is that?
It's a USAA Platinum MasterCard issued to James Holmes.
And People's Exhibit 722, what is that?
It's a Kaiser Permanente health card issued to James Holmes.
Do you recall actually collecting those three exhibits, 720, 721, and 722?
Yes, sir.
Where did you collect those?
From the Brown wallet. Brown wallet.
Do those three exhibits, do they all appear to be in the same or similar condition aside from perhaps being packaged in plastic now?
Yes, sir.
I would move for admission, Your Honor, of People's Exhibits 720, 721, and 722.
Ms. Spengler, any objection?
No objection, Ms.
Yes, without objection, all three are admitted, and then counsel may approach.
Judge, I just want to confirm 720, 721, and 722 were admitted. Is that correct?
Yes, without objection, exhibits P-TR 720, P-TR 721, and P-TR 722 are admitted without objection.
Thank you, sir. Detective Welton, do you have in front of you People's Exhibit 723?
Yes, sir, I do.
Do you recognize that exhibit?
Yes, I do.
What is that?
It's an envelope containing $280
Where did that $280 come from, if you know?
from the brown wallet.
Did you personally count the money that was collected from the brown wallet?
Yes, I did.
Does People's Exhibit 723 encapsulate all money or dollar bills, or bills, I should say, not dollar bills, but bills that were contained and found within the wallet?
Yes, it does.
When you counted the currency out of the wallet that makes up People's Exhibit 723, was there a particular denomination associated with that?
They were all 20s.
To the best of your knowledge, does it appear that People's Exhibit 723 is in the same or similar condition as when you observed it?
Except for it looked like it had been opened by Detective Apple on November 22nd of 2013.
Okay. And where do you see that on that exhibit?
It's on the bottom, looks like it was cut and then retaped with his initials.
Okay. Aside from the, well, let me ask you this. Are you familiar with Detective Apple's handwriting?
Yes.
Do you work with Detective Apple in the Major Crimes Unit?
Yes, I did.
Is it common practice within the Aurora Police Department when an exhibit is open to then reseal it in a fashion that's similar to what you're observing here on People's Exhibit 723?
Yes, it happens several times during the course of the court proceedings.
Is it also common for an officer or a detective to place their initials on that type of repackaging, just as you are observing it there on People's Exhibit 723?
Yes, sir.
Now, aside from that particular resealing and marking that you described being from Detective Apple, does People's Exhibit 723 appear to be in the same or similar condition as when you collected those items, referring to the wallet that you previously testified to?
Yes, sir.
At this time, Judge, I would move for admission of People's Exhibit 723.
Any objection, Ms. Spengler? No. Okay, without objection, People's Exhibit P-TR 723 is admitted.
Detective Welton, People's Exhibits 718 through 723 inclusive, all the ones that we just talked about that have just been admitted, does that contain all of the items that were within that brown wallet that you took into possession from Sergeant Files?
Yes, sir.
Anything that we're missing?
No, sir.
Judge, may I approach the witness briefly?
Yes.
Sir, I've handed you what's been already admitted and previously published to the jury, People's Exhibit 339. Do you recognize that exhibit?
It's a Colorado driver's license.
Okay, did you ever see that driver's license the evening of July 20th?
No, sir.
Okay. Judge, at this time I would ask to publish People's Exhibits 718, 719, 720, 721, 722, and 723 to the jury physically through the use of your bailiff. Respectfully, Judge, I would request, I recognize that 339 has already been published overhead. I'd request that that be allowed to the jury at the same time because all was contained within the wallet.
Is there any objection, Ms. Spengler? No objection. Okay, all right. Ms. Gerlings, would you please hand those to the jury? Perhaps we can hand one of them to one row and the rest of them to the other row so that it goes faster. The record should reflect that People's Exhibits P-TR-718 through 723 inclusive have been published to the jury. Mr. Edson?
As well as, I believe, Exhibit 339, Judge.
Yes, thank you. 339 was included as well. Thank you.
Judge, subject to recall, I have no further questions.
Any cross-examination at this time, Ms. Spengler? No. And the jury does not appear to have any questions. So, sir, you're subject to recall, but you're free to go for now. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Call your next witness, please.
Detective Mel, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, please be seated. And hand me that copy there. Please tell us your full name and spell your first and last names.
Certainly. My name is Chuck Mel, C-H-U-C-K, Mel, M-E-H-L.
Mr. Orman, you may proceed.
Thank you. Detective, who do you work for?
Work for the Aurora Police Department.
What is your job?
I'm a detective in the Major Crime Homicide Unit.
How long have you been with Major Crime Homicide?
I've been in that particular unit, 2 different stints for a total of 17 years.
How long have you been with the Aurora Police Department?
I've been a policeman for 35 years, and I've been with Aurora for the last 24.
Did you participate in the investigation into the events occurring at the Aurora Century 16 Theater in the early morning hours of July 20th, 2012?
Yes, sir, I did.
Where were you and at what time did you first hear about the incident at the theater?
I was at home asleep, and at 1:38 in the morning, I received a call from my supervisor, Sergeant Matt Files. He told me that there was an active shooter situation going on at the theater by the Aurora Mall, and at that point, there were 5 known deceased people. He asked me to respond in order to assist in the investigation.
And by you saying at that point, they hadn't gotten accurate information about the total number of deceased people?
That's true.
Would it be fair to say that the information you had at that point in time was very rudimentary in that no thorough investigation had taken place?
That's certainly correct.
Were you asked to participate then in the ongoing investigation?
Yes, sir, I was.
So you were in bed at home. Where'd you go?
I was directed to go to the Aurora Police Department. While I was driving to the Aurora Police Department, I received a phone call from Lieutenant Paul O'Keefe. He told me that there was a suspect in custody, and he told me that Detective Craig Apple and I would be interviewing that individual.
And just so that we're clear on this, Lieutenant O'Keefe was, what was his job at that time?
He was a lieutenant in the investigations division at the Aurora Police Department.
Your boss's boss?
Correct.
What time did you get to the police station?
I arrived at probably about 2:20, I believe.
Now, you told me about Lieutenant O'Keefe calling you and telling you that it would be your job to talk to the suspect in the case.
Yes, sir.
Was that your first assignment then upon arrival at the police station?
It was.
The person that you spoke to, is he present in the courtroom today?
He is.
Could you please point him out?
Certainly. Mr. Holmes is seated at the defense table here wearing a light blue open-collared shirt.
Your Honor, subject to cross-examination, I request the record reflect identification.
The record will so reflect.
Did you speak to the defendant?
I did.
And who was present with you?
Detective Craig Apple was present during that interview as well.
This gentleman sitting next to me right here?
That's correct.
Where did that conversation take place?
Took place in an interview room in the Detective Bureau on the 3rd floor of the main headquarters of the Aurora Police Department.
Can you please describe that room for us?
Certainly. It's very, I describe the surroundings as a Spartan. There's no windows, there are no pictures on the wall. The dimensions are approximately 15 by 12. There's a long table in there and chairs on either side of that table.
Is that room equipped with equipment that allows you to record audio and video of conversations?
Yes, sir.
And was that equipment running the night of the early morning hours of July 20th?
Yes, sir.
Before we get to the interview, I'd like you to tell us, when you arrived, was the defendant already in that interview room?
He was.
Was anyone with him?
Yes. Patrol Officer Sheldon Irons was standing in that interview room with Mr. Holmes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
I've shown this to counsel, Your Honor. I'm going to show you what I've marked for identification purposes as People's Exhibit. And Your Honor, I'm sorry, I'm not speaking to the microphone there. It is the habit of a lifetime for me to continue with the question walking back. I apologize. I'll try to stop doing that.
All right, thank you.
Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
This is a copy, a DVD copy of the interview that was conducted with Mr. Holmes on that early morning hours on July 20th, 2012.
Does it show the conversation between you and Detective Apple and the defendant?
It does.
Your Honor, I move to admit People's Exhibit 789.
Will you approach very briefly?
Yes. Okay, without any additional objections and based on my prior rulings, People's Exhibit P-TR-789 is admitted and may be published.
Thank you, Your Honor. That trumpet is not part of the exhibit, Your Honor.
Okay.
Take that, yeah. Sir? How you doing tonight? I'm Detective Chuck Mel. This is Detective Craig Apple. I would like to talk to you here tonight. Would you do me a favor and sit over here for me? Would you mind doing that for me real quick, please?
You need anything to drink, sir? Water or anything?
Yeah. What would you like to drink? Water. Just water? Okay, sure.
I'll get the officer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just sit down. Seat there for me, please.
Yeah, we're okay, yeah.
Thank you.
You want me back there? Or?
No, I'll sit back and take that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got water for you, sir. Okay. He'll be here right away. Again, sir, my name is Chuck Mel.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
No.
No, yeah, very good. And this is Detective Apple. Could we get your name?
I already gave my name.
Okay, I haven't talked to anybody who has your name. Just tell us what your name is.
It's James.
James, okay.
Holmes.
James what?
Holmes.
Holmes? How you spell that, please?
Like Sherlock.
Okay, so Holmes?
Yes.
Okay. What's your birthday?
12/13/87.
Okay.
James, you okay? I mean, is there anything we should know about? Are you injured or anything other than some scrapes? Anything?
No.
We're here to help you.
Yeah, we're just, we're going to make this as easy as possible as we can on you, okay? And we have water coming here. So, other than that, do you need anything?
Oxygen.
Okay. You want me to bring a fan in here, get some air circulating or anything?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay, are you good to talk with us? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Are you having trouble breathing?
No.
Okay.
There you go, James. If you want more, just let me know.
Yeah. Do you need us to get you some help, or are you good to talk to us?
Help is in counsel?
No, as in, make sure you're okay physically. The paramedics check you out. Are you okay there? You good to talk to us?
Yes.
You good to talk to us?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. James, before we get, is it okay if I call you James, by the way?
Yes.
Okay. What I'd like to do here, I'm sure you have some questions, and we have some questions, okay? Before we have a chance to talk, okay, we got to get a couple things out of the way, then we'll have a chance to talk, and I'll answer any questions that you might have. Fair enough? Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. By the mere fact you're here at the police department, okay, I'm sure you've seen this on TV 100 times, okay? I'm going to read this to you. If you have any questions,
It was not complete, Your Honor. I don't know what happened there.
Children's something.
uh-huh.
Can we stop that for a
Yeah,
second?
what about that?
Please. I believe it skipped ahead about 10 seconds. If we could just go back a little bit. That's a little bit more. I think that's fine right there.
Okay. I'm sure you've seen this on TV 100 times, okay? I'm going to read this to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, okay?
The sign said victim services unit, children's something.
Uh-huh. Yeah, what about that?
There wasn't any children hurt.
I don't know. We'll get to that. I don't know. Okay. Let me read this to you, and then I'll answer the questions that you might have. Fair enough? Okay. Again, if you have any questions about this, feel free to ask. Number one,
You're going to the range?
Yes, it's a formality that I'm going through by the Mayor Factor Police Department.
Now, something happened with the audio there, but I think we could hear it. Is that an accurate depiction of the interview?
Yes, sir, it is.
I want to ask you a few questions about that. At some point, the defendant asks you about a sign that he had seen walking up to the interview room. Do you recall that question?
Yes, sir, I do.
Are you familiar with that building?
I am.
You work in it. It's a ridiculous question, but it's one of those things lawyers have to ask. You familiar with the building?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what sign he would be referring to?
I do.
What does it say?
When you come up the third floor at the Aurora Police Department in the Detective Bureau, when you get off the elevator and you start heading to the north, immediately to your left on the west wall, there's a sign that says Crimes Against Children Unit. Directly below that is a sign that says Victim Services Unit. When Mr. Holmes was brought up to our Detective Bureau that evening, he walked past those two signs on his way to the interview room.
After you were done speaking with the defendant, did he remain in the interview room?
He did.
And did you later get him some more water?
I did.
I'd like to ask you, maybe I forgot to ask you this question before. What time did that interview start?
The interview actually started at 2:44 that morning.
I'd like to go forward a little bit to about 3:16 a.m.
Yes,
that
sir.
morning. Did you observe the defendant doing anything in that interview room at that time?
I did. At 2:55 that morning, I took him a bottle of water. At 3:16, I went back to check on his status, basically. He was still seated alone in the interview room. He was sitting at the table, and the bottle of water that I had taken him was empty. And the cup that we had provided to him earlier was empty as well. He had the empty bottle of water standing upright, and he pulled that cup over to the edge of the table to where it's maybe half off the table, and then with his finger, he would flip that up and trying to get the empty cup to land on top of the empty water bottle. I saw him do that about 4 or 5 times.
Thank you. I want to ask you a couple questions now about a later action that you took regarding a piece of evidence. Did you later respond to the crime scene?
I did.
About what time?
The first time I went to the crime scene was, I think, at about 4 o'clock that morning.
Did you at some point receive an item of evidence from an FBI agent, Tony Payne?
I did.
Where were you when you received that?
That was at 3:30 that afternoon. I was directed to go to the crime scene, to the rear of the theater where the suspect's car was parked. I was told to retrieve an iPhone that was in that car. When I went to the crime scene there and the car was being processed, there were 2 FBI evidence technicians working on the car. One of them, Tony Payne, handed me, put an iPhone out of the car into a clear plastic bag. At that point, I took possession of that bag. I returned to the Aurora Police Department with the bag, and I turned that over to my counterpart, Detective Mark Yakino.
Can you spell that name for us, Yakino?
It's Y-A-C-A-N-O.
Now, you later on interviewed a lot of people, right?
Yes, sir.
And I'm not going to ask you about the contents of those interviews, but do you have any idea about how many witnesses you spoke to?
I didn't speak to that many. It's actually about 7 or 8, I believe.
Thank you. Can I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have no further direct examination, and I doubt I'll need to call him again, but you never know, so I'd like to keep him under subpoena, subject to possible recall, which I doubt I'll need.
All right. Is there any cross-examination at this time, Mr. King?
Not at this time, Judge, but would like to keep him on call under our subpoena as well.
All right. Let me see if there are any questions from the jury at this time. There do not appear to be any questions, but you're subject to recall by the prosecution, and then you may be called by the defense. So,
Yes, sir.
all right, you're still under subpoena. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Call your next witness, please.
The people call Officer John Gonzalez.
Yes. Why don't you come up and just wait for us right there, please? Okay, the objection is overruled, but you have to proceed with the limitations that I indicated at the bench. So, sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm on the penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, sir.
All right, please be seated.
Thank you.
Please tell us your full name and spell your first and last names.
My name is John Gonzalez, John-Gonzales.
Ms. Pearson, you may proceed.
Officer Gonzalez, where are you employed?
The city of Aurora.
Are you employed by the police department?
That's correct.
How long have you been employed by the police department?
It'll be 20 years this August.
Prior to working for the Aurora Police Department, did you work for another police agency?
I did.
Which one was that?
City of Wheat Ridge, I worked there for 4 years.
What did your duties consist of in July of 2012 for the Aurora Police Department?
That night I was assigned to Patrol District 2, second watch.
And second watch, what hours are those?
It starts at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and ends at 1 a.m. that following day.
So did you go to work at 3 o'clock on July 19th?
That's correct.
And were you intended to get off at 1 a.m. on July 20th?
That's correct.
Did you hear a call for people to respond to the Century 16 Theater on that night?
Yes, I did.
Where were you at the time?
I had just finished into watch. I just signed off my computer, and I was in the parking lot of District 2, which just is down the street from Century 16.
And what did the call request?
The call came in as shots fired at the Century 16 Theater. Then it was updated as multiple shots fired in the theater.
You were still at your car?
At the time the second update came in, I was already entering the theater parking lot.
When you first entered the theater parking lot, did you see any other police officers?
No, I did not.
Where did you park? Where did you go to?
I immediately entered into the theater parking lot and parked on the northwest corner of the theater.
Could I have People's Exhibit 4740, please? And there's a map there that you can see, and there's a pointer there behind you too. Can you point to where the northwest corner of the parking lot was? Actually, you'll need to use the, I don't think that will probably work, but there's a pointer that we put together there.
Oh, right here?
Yes.
I entered the theater.
And there's a microphone right here, wireless, yeah. Handheld microphone, thank you. You have to turn it on.
Is this better?
That's good.
Okay, I entered through the Center Tech light up here, and I came through the ring road, and I parked my car right on the northwest corner right here.
Okay. Are you familiar with this theater?
Yes, I am.
Had you been there before?
Yes, I've been there many times.
How did you get into the theater complex?
As I stated, I came in through that northwest door. There's a exit door on that corner right there that faces west toward the mall.
By the time you entered the theater, did you know what theater the shooting had occurred in?
Yes, I did.
And were they telling you that on the radio as you were arriving?
That's correct.
And was it Theater 9?
That's correct.
So how did you get into the theater?
As I approached the theater, as I was driving up, there was people running out of the building like it was on fire. I mean, there was people scattered everywhere, running through all the doors. That door is normally kept locked because it's an exit door only. And as people were running out, I was just able to access entry that way.
Where did you go?
I proceeded to the concession stand. I knew Theater 9 was just to the south side of that. I went behind the concession stand and I took up a position right outside the doors of Theater 9.
What do you mean by taking a position?
I was on the corner, I had my weapon drawn, and I was ascertaining what was going on at that point.
At this point, you had not seen any other officers?
That's correct.
What information did you have about what was going on in Theater 9 at that point?
The dispatch was informed that this was now an active shooter. We had multiple shots fired inside the mall. Excuse me, inside the theater.
Did you enter Theater 9?
Yes, I did.
At what point in this process after you've taken position did you enter Theater 9?
I made a cursory entry into the theater and was overcome with a chemical agent and unknown smoke, and I didn't know what it was, so I stepped back out. At that point, I was met by several other officers that had arrived on scene.
Are you familiar with chemical smokes or chemical like the odor that you smelled in the theater?
Yes, I am.
And what was it to you?
I couldn't identify it. I knew it had a strong odor of a smoke, but there was another kind of a chemical that was inside it I couldn't identify at that time. I wasn't sure of what it was. That's why I stepped out and told the other officers to get our gas mask so we can re-enter.
Did you air that gas masks would be needed for officers to enter the theater?
Yes, I did.
Did you enter into the theater?
As we were getting ready to enter the theater, several juveniles came out. There was 3 of them. 2 was carrying one. It appeared that the one that they were carrying was shot. They informed me that the shooter was still inside the theater and he was still actively shooting.
Did you enter the theater alone?
No, I did not.
And why not?
I was waiting. I put together a critical entry team so we can enter the theater as a team. I sent 2 officers to the right side or the south side, and I entered and I went into the north side.
So if you entered on the north side, if you are facing the theater, would that be your right or your left, if you're facing the theater screen?
Left.
When you entered the theater, you said from the left side.
That's correct.
And how did you go down the hallway?
When you enter the theater, there's a short door, double doors that you enter in through, and then it tees off to the right and to the left. And then you make another turn, and then you enter into the theater that way.
Were you the first officer into the theater?
Yes, I was.
When you came down the hallway, what did you see?
It was really poorly lit. It was dark. The movie was still playing. As I rounded the corner and I could see all the way down to the end of the where the screen was, I saw a body lying halfway in, halfway out into the hallway as I approached inside the theater.
What could you hear in the theater?
I could hear the fire alarms going off. The movie was playing. It was really loud. You can hear the faint voices of crying, people crying out for help. And like I said, my vision was kind of obscured at that time because of the smoke, and the chemical agent was pretty lingering in the theater at that time.
Were you looking for a shooter in the theater at that point?
Yes, that was our mission.
How did you do that?
We look for obviously when we come in, we're looking for any aggressive movement. We're looking for anybody obviously that's shooting or engaging people. What we did immediately is we came in, we went up each of the aisles that go all the way up to the top. We searched the top, came back down and did a secondary search. At that point, we weren't able to find any hostile people at that time.
Were there a lot of people in the theater?
Yes.
Were there people in every row of the theater?
As I said, my vision was obscured when I first came in. The only light was from the movie theater, from the movie that was playing. And then you can see that there was people down on every aisle. Hands up, people bent over chairs, a lot of people on the ground, people in the aisles, in the main aisles, people in the aisles in between the seats.
So when you searched the theater, how did you do it? You went from you entered on the bottom, where the bottom rows are, and did you go to the top?
Yeah, we did a methodical search. We actually did the main area first, made sure there was no one down there. Then we went up, and then we actually walked through each aisle to make sure that there was nobody armed or anybody actually shooting at that time. And then we went and checked the back, and then we went back down and did it again.
While you were in the theater, did you ever hear that a suspect had been taken into custody?
I did not know.
How long did it take to search the theater?
We were pretty quick when we first went in there. Like I said, when I first rounded that corner on the bottom, I could look up and I could see there was no one standing at that time. Everybody was down. There was no one moving, very hostile. There was nobody shooting. There was nobody doing anything violent at that time. And then, like I said, I took one side, the other guys took the other side. We went up all the way to the top, and then we went all the way back down. And like I said, we went through each aisle and made sure there was no one shooting or hurting anybody at that time.
At some point, did the lights come up in the theater?
I had got on the radio and advised dispatch to send somebody to get hold of the management office and turn on the lights and turn off the movie because it was very difficult to ascertain what was going on at in the theater at that time.
Did that occur?
Yes, it did.
Did it take very long for that to occur?
Actually, I think it occurred relatively quickly.
Once the lights came up, were you able to determine whether or not there was a shooter in Theater 9?
I was not able to turn the shooter at that time, no.
Did you find anybody who appeared to you to be a shooter still in Theater 9?
No.
Once the lights had come up, looking around, did it appear to you that you needed to have medical help respond?
It was very apparent at that time there was multiple critical victims down in the theater. You can see the injuries very plain, and it was obviously that we needed more assistance to get there. And I got on the air and I asked for assistance. I told them that we had several people down in the theater and I needed medical attention.
Did you personally try to get people out of the theater?
At that time when the lights came on, I noticed we had a lot of critical victims down, and I was standing in between, about halfway in the theater. And when the lights came on, I saw a young lady at my feet, and I could tell she had a gunshot wound to the leg. And I looked down, and I could see that the officers we had control of the east exit at that time, which is a fire exit that goes out to the east side. We picked her up. I had another officer help me pick her up, and I knew that it was very critical at that time, and time was a factor, that we get these people to an area where we can get them immediate medical attention. At that time, I took her outside to the east parking lot, and we set up a triage area out there. I directed other officers to grab other injured, and we started evacuating people out that east door.
Did you yourself make multiple trips in and out of the theater?
I probably did maybe half dozen, running back and forth and grabbing victims and carrying people outside to the east side.
At some point, the people who were being gathered on the east side of the theater, did you start putting them into patrol cars?
I aired again for medical attention, telling them that we were taking them out to the east side. I saw the officers carrying people out. I noticed that we were getting more and more victims outside, and on one of the trips when I was carrying somebody out, I noticed a patrol car, police patrol car out there. We just started loading them in the police cars. We'd open up, a car would pull up, and I'd open up the door, put them in the back seat, run around the other side, because it was very difficult for us just to put them in the car. We'd load them in the car, 1, 2, sometimes 3 at a time, and that car would take off, and another police car would just pull up. We just repeat the process.
That objection is untimely. You have to object in a timely fashion after a question is asked, not after an answer. Go ahead.
When you were in the theater, did you see any firearms?
Yes, I did.
Sustained.
Did you check the people who were in the theater who ultimately were left in the theater after people had been taken out to determine if any of them were not in fact deceased?
Sustained.
Did you find a person in the theater who you initially thought might not have made it, but in fact did?
Yes, I did.
Overruled.
Can you please explain the circumstances of that person?
As we started taking people out, it was very difficult because of some of the people are really critical, and they weren't responsive. So we would double check and make sure they were okay. Plus, as it got really thin and we were down to just a few people in the theater, we weren't sure if we were still looking for a shooter or not. So I would check each one to make sure that they were not playing dead or hiding in the theater or underneath people. At one point, I found a young gentleman, was not responsive. Checked his vitals. I think he was one of the last ones we took out, and we determined later on that I was able to determine that he was breathing, so we were able to carry him out.
Did you learn his
I can't remember. I think it was Bankitz or Bank.
Do you recall if it was Stefan Moten?
I believe he was one of them, yes. I'm sorry? I believe that was one of the names, yes.
One moment. Thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Thank you.
Ms. Higgs, do you have cross-examination?
I do not, thank you, officer. I would like to put something on the record, though, when we get an opportunity.
Okay. Sir, if you would give us a moment, see if the jury has any questions. The jury may have a question. Thank you. Would counsel please approach? Officer, the jury has submitted some questions that I have found are appropriate based on the rules of evidence and other applicable rules of law. So I'm going to ask you those questions now. The first question is, when you arrived inside, actually it says outside Theater 9, did you hear shooting?
I did not.
The next question is, how long did the shooting go on, if you know?
I do not know.
And the last question is, did you know at the time where the shooter went? And again, only if you know.
I do not know.
All right. Any follow-up questions, Ms. Pearson?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Higgs, any follow-up questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right. May this witness be excused? May be released from his subpoena?
He may.
Any objection?
No.
All right. Sir, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, members of the jury, it's a little bit after 5 o'clock, and so I'm going to go ahead and adjourn for the day. I gave you the advisements on Thursday. I'm going to give them to you again probably tomorrow in full, or maybe the next day, but I'm confident that you know them by heart. Please make sure that you abide by each and every one of those advisements. All of them are mandatory. All of them are important, extremely important, and each and every one of you is bound by them. Again, I remind you that you should avoid the temptation of thinking along the lines of, well, just one little violation won't hurt anything. Just one time is no big deal. That's very, very dangerous thinking, and it's improper. Any single little violation, first of all, there's no such thing as a little violation, but any violation would be a big problem. We are trusting that you will follow all of the advisements, every single one of them. Secondly, please avoid the thinking of, well, who's going to find out? Avoid that type of thinking, because that, again, would be improper for you to think that it's okay to violate one of the advisements because nobody will find out. And frankly, as I've mentioned before, the likelihood is that we will find out. So avoid violating any of the advisements. Make sure you follow each and every one of them, okay? All right, with that, have a good evening, get some rest tonight, and I'll see you tomorrow morning at the usual time, okay? Thank you, folks. 8:15 tomorrow. Thank you. And juror number 872, good luck with that tooth. Thank you for being a trooper. The record should reflect that the jury has now exited the courtroom. Everyone may be seated. By the way, folks, I went back and checked Exhibit 4518, and that was one of the pictures that was subject to Order D98B. And so I checked my notes, and I was reminded of the fact that I did review that photo, and I ruled on that photo in the order. So in terms of the two exhibits that people had initially said were 260 and 261, were those mislabeled, or did you just read the numbers wrong?
Just can't read today, Your Honor. I apologize.
Okay, but they were labeled correctly, and we don't need to correct the labeling.
Correct.
All right, great. And for the record again, those should be 2660 and 2661. All right, is there anything else on behalf of the people before we adjourn?
Yes, Your Honor. Briefly.
Your Honor, and I spoke with the defense about this request as well. The parties are requesting that, with the court's permission, the court would slightly relax the rules of the overflow courtroom, such that all of the witnesses would have to obey by the decorum order and be quiet and have the utmost respect, but that people who wanted to go to the overflow courtroom be allowed to leave and come back, not just when the court breaks. Part of the reason is that some of the victims who want to attend court and be in the overflow room have to drop off their children at the daycare, and they can't make it back here and through security in time. So then they miss the whole morning session, and they've traveled here from out of state to be here. And in addition, for victims who think that they need to leave this courtroom to obey with the decorum order, once they regain their composure, they'd like an opportunity to go back to the overflow room. And the defense indicated that they had some people as well who'd like that opportunity to be able to come and go more freely.
All right, is that correct, Ms. Brady? Yes, sir. All right. Without objection, I will grant that request. I think it's a request that makes sense.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So it is granted. Anything else from the people? No? Anything else anything from the defense? Ms. Spengler?
Your Honor, I expect testimony from a prosecution witness tomorrow, and I expect the district attorney will attempt to introduce a transcript of an audio recording between the witness and Mr. Holmes. And I want to let the court know up front that we're going to be objecting to that transcript being introduced as evidence, and I would like the court to have the time to review the transcript in the event that the court feels that's necessary. I wanted to draw your attention to the anticipated objection we will have tomorrow.
Are you objecting to the accuracy of the transcript?
In part, yes.
Do you have a transcript that you think is more accurate? Do you have a transcript of that recording?
I understand the court's question.
I changed the question. Do you have a transcript of the recording?
I have, Judge, I think that's asking for attorney-client work privilege and information that's work product. I'm letting the court know that I am objecting to and will anticipate objecting to the prosecution's proposed exhibit.
Okay. Who wants to address that argument? If you would go to the microphone, please.
It's my witness, Your Honor, so I guess I will. This is Special Agent Guminer, Your Honor, and I think, well, I know that you've heard the recording because we had a motions hearing about it. The recording was made with a small handheld digital voice recorder, and the quality is not that great. We had a transcript that we had previously provided to the court. I have had Agent Guminer, who was present for the recording, go through that transcript and make it as accurate as he can. And he has made corrections and has made it as accurate as possible. So I don't know any other way to make that transcript more accurate.
And that recording is difficult to hear and to understand.
That is correct. And what my plan was to introduce both the recording and the transcript and ask that I be able to distribute copies of that transcript to the jury as they listen to the recording, which I anticipate would be admitted as evidence, which I think would assist them in understanding what is in the transcript. Now,
you just want the jurors to be able to follow along as the recording is being played.
Right.
And then are you intending to introduce the transcript into evidence?
Well, I don't see a way to show it to the jurors unless I do that. So I think that the rules of evidence would make me do that, but if there's a way, I don't need them to have it as a transcript. I just want them to be able to understand what's on the recording, and this is the best way to do that.
I know there's some case law on this, and I'll look it up tonight. I don't know that you're right that the transcript has to be admitted if the jurors are allowed to follow along as the tape is playing. But I'll look at the case law in any event. And you're saying that you had the recording transcribed. Who transcribed the recording? I know that you said that Agent Gumbiner checked it for accuracy, but who initially transcribed it?
And initially, a secretary at our office transcribed it. But
And is this someone who is certified to do transcripts?
no, they're not a court reporter, which is why I had Agent Gumbiner, who was present and has listened to it, go through it word for word and make it accurate. So I don't think a court reporter could do a better job, because a court reporter wasn't there. Court reporter didn't hear it. So, are they objecting to my argument, Your Honor? I mean, I am allowed to make argument. They might not like it, but I'm an attorney in this case, and I should be able to make arguments.
Hold on, one at a time. He's allowed to make the argument. I'll let you make an argument in reply after he's done. So let him finish his argument, please. All right, take a deep breath. Mr. Orman, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I think that the question is not who creates a transcript in a situation like this. The question is it accurate? It's like a photograph. Is it accurate? And I think this is as accurate as it'll ever get, and it's as accurate as is possible. Is it going to be perfect? No. I don't think we can make a perfect transcript. So that's the situation.
And you're saying that the most accurate way to transcribe the recording is through Agent Gumbiner because he was there and he is in a better position to understand what he said and what he heard, as opposed to having a court reporter listen to it and try to figure out what is on the recording.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
No. I mean, I don't know that I had a copy ready for Your Honor right now, but I'm sure we have it if you want me to give you a copy.
Sure, that would be helpful. And then a copy of the CD would be helpful too, if you have an extra copy.
I'm sure I do. I mean, this isn't...
Sure, we probably have one too. Actually, we have one, so
Well,
don't worry about that. If you have a copy of the transcript, that would be helpful.
You don't have a copy, though, of the redacted version, Your Honor, which
That's
this
true.
is. So, and I should have both of those. I didn't ask my paralegal to have them at my fingertips right this second, so it may take a minute or two to find them, and they may have them at the office ready to bring over in the morning. I'm just not sure. So,
I'll give you a minute and a half.
thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Okay, Ms. Spengler, your turn. Go to the microphone, please.
Your Honor, what the district attorney cannot do in their argument is purposefully argue what is inflammatory and will prejudice the defense, and I am making contemporaneous objections to his argument as Mr. Holmes' attorney in this case. But regarding the transcript and the audio recording, there are parts that are inaudible. The court has heard it. The parties talk over each other. The voices go in and out. And so if you have a lead investigator in the prosecution of James Holmes, meaning Agent Gumbiner, as the person who is going through and editing a transcript that goes to this jury that they will then be reviewing as they're watching this audio recording, that is a problem. And that is something that I think this court needs to say no to, and the jury should review the recording uninfluenced by what's contained in this edited transcript by a lead agent who's closely involved with the prosecution of Mr. Holmes. And that is the record that I'll make right now. I would rely on the United States and Colorado Constitution, Mr. Holmes' right to due process, fair trial, as well as the Eighth Amendment.
In terms of interrupting Mr. Orman, I disagree with you. The jury's not here. We're outside the presence of the jury, and so I think the right way to handle that is to allow him to finish the argument and then stand up and disagree with him. In terms of the substance of what's in dispute here, this is not the first time that a court of law is considering the admission of an exhibit in which people talk over each other, and it's difficult to understand what they're saying. And I know that there's case law on this because the point is to try to allow the jury to understand the evidence and not to try to play games with the jury so that the jury won't understand. Now, you're right, it has to be accurate, and that's why I was asking, do you have a transcript that you think is more accurate? Now, you don't have to provide it to me, and that's okay, but I'm going to have to decide whether this is appropriate based on the case law and based on the representation that they're making. So if you have another transcript that you would like me to consider, great, I'll do that. If not, then I'll look at the case law and I'll make that decision and give you my decision tomorrow morning. Okay? Yes.
I would like to hand the court a copy of.
Okay.
Have been marked for identification as People's Exhibit 1023A and 1023B.
All right. Thank you. Frankly, even the recording that played earlier today at times was difficult to understand, and I wondered whether either side wanted a transcript to be given to the jurors so that they could follow along. I didn't ask you because neither side brought it up, and so I figured you're both comfortable with it, but at times it was a little difficult to understand. So, and I know because we've had motions hearings and I've ruled on these issues that there are transcripts out there, and I know that I had to listen to some of these recordings over and over again to try to figure out what was said, because sometimes it's difficult to understand what is contained within these audio exhibits. But in any event, I'll look at the law and I'll follow the law and give you my decision tomorrow morning. I understand you're objecting. I'm not saying that I will allow it. I will give you folks a decision first thing tomorrow morning. All right? Okay, thank you, folks. Have a good evening. I'll see you tomorrow. The court will be in recess.